Good morning video diary. It is August 15. Only 3 days till the last day of my son's life 1 year ago. But today I want to talk about something a little different. And somehow in my mind it connects. And that is this business with the Catholic Church in Pennsylvania, and really all, I'm going to expand this out to all religions, because it really is a problem with all religions. And I'll tie it into my personal psychology that has been it's relevant to forest dying and what death is, what life is, what morality is. And so let me start in Pennsylvania. They just uncovered a cabal, a network of bishops that kept a secret book of which only they had access to, that had the either names, information, and or the material of all the rapes that they had been incurring. And you see some of the guys talking, and they're even people my age, so this obviously has been going on for a long time. And there just seems to be a formula that if you put together a priestly caste that pretends, claims to have the knowledge of something supernatural, because that's all that religion is. It's a claim of supernaturalism, that what you see is not what you get. Don't believe what you see, don't believe what you hear, believe what we tell you. And it's kind of reductive, but I think would hold up under any circumstance in a religious context. Religions may have started out in one particular way and been relevant, like the things that we hear in the Bible that are contemporaneous to its day almost don't make any sense to us today, because we're like, well, what is that? And they're like, well, that was said at that time for the people at that time. Like that none of you, some of you will see this before the end of your lifetime, the rapture. Anyway, this isn't about specific things of any particular religion, but it really is about religions are saying we know, and the reason we know is X. And usually it's because some, usually male, right? Because religion is set up like a court, a royal court, where you have the regent and the subjects. At least in the West, these the big three in the West are set up like a royal situation. And that's how we're never supposed to, question, and those type of reasonings are beyond our ability to grasp and all that stuff. So there's different ones, which should tell us all that, like, oh, so this is a phenomena that happens to humans, or that humans create, not one in which we're being communicated with or to, or we wouldn't have, this kind of multiplicity. And there are many religions. I think the one count I heard was 3,000 extant religions right now, and there's probably been, many more. And I would probably say that we each individually have our own subjective version, and it probably comes out when you're trying to indoctrinate your children. Because you hear it come out of your mouth, and you're like, oof, I don't know if I believe it, but I want them to, so that they're controlled. So religion is about controlling the behavior of large groups, populations, so that, yes, we may have some order or some expectation. If I was the regent, I would want that. I would want to know that you would not violate these norms, and that those norms are enforceable because they are divine. If they just go region to region or era to era, you'll be able to change them, which is how we've evolved political systems, particularly in the West, over time to be better. They're certainly better than they were, and that evolution is because they're not divine. Although I'll say that there's something incredibly divine about having a world where people set up systems that allowed for those systems to be improved. That's very, very cool. I wouldn't say, maybe not divine, but it's super, super smart and cool. So, controlling people, and then you have to set up your little army of whoever your ministers or your, in a church situation, to have all that hierarchy stuff, it's one thing. And then in the evangelical situation, like in America and other places that have that problem, you have individuals that are rogue, by the sheer force of their persuasive and passionate personalities, become ministers that claim to, in their cases, that they're inspired, that they've been called to speak on behalf. I personally, and I'll just put this in a little box so there's no confusion, I have never been, and I was heavily indoctrinated in Christianity by two sources. One, my father, who is an Eastern Orthodox, he was an archbishop at the time that he died. Sounds very Harry Potterish now when I say that word, archbishop, and my, let's just say, evangelical wing in the family that, sincerely seeking perhaps some form of control over their reality. I have my own theories about what led them to that, but one thing I will tell you is that my own personal experience, and I've mentioned this before, is my father was a very brutal person, not very subtle. Maybe, I didn't know him as at past 13 when he died. He didn't bother to say goodbye or leave a will, though he had a protracted illness. It wasn't sudden. I'm left with the feelings towards him that are not very pleasant memories, not pleasant memories, and not pleasant feelings towards him. After I grew into being a person, like where I could go, wait a second, it's fucking bullshit to treat somebody by trying to tell them 2 + 2 is 5, or just to get frustrated with having your authority confronted because your answers are bad. My dad would fly off into rages. Sound familiar, anyone? And, as I got older and I realized, oh my God, that is his brother who I got to know. and love, my uncle, would never have done anything like that. So I started making the connection like, oh, that's a choice. That's an individual mechanism, decision to process your emotions that way and treat your children like objects. And or I don't know what goes on in the mind of somebody who would cross the line sexually with his kids. What has to happen in somebody's brain. And to extend that idea, have you ever heard that thing in Confucianism that you should view everyone of your age as a cousin, everyone older than you as an uncle or an aunt or a grandparent, even a parent, and younger than you as a younger sibling or a cousin, or a child, and after I heard that, I realized that extend that idea, like what kind of mind, where do you have to be in your brain to sexually abuse children? Because I think it's a real thing. It's like they're available. They can be manipulated. They can be terrorized to behaving a certain way, and to you it appears that they're being compliant. We children who were abused thought and probably talked a lot. I don't know if I talked a lot. Just you find your allies. And yeah, so I'm seeing these guys talk about these priests in Pennsylvania who abuse them, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is my story. This is my story. This is, and I hated men, like anybody who looked like my father. I felt very, just I would have a reaction to that, like a big guy with a beard, and then all of a sudden everybody started getting big and having beards, during the first hipster surge. And I'm like, well, these guys aren't abusive. They're just, they like beards. And but it's funny, like you don't outgrow that stuff. When somebody crosses the line, your fists are up. And then they're not ever going to come down. The problem is that we take that abuse, and since we don't understand it, we process it and sublimate it and act out, and we do process it somehow, because it is too powerful an energy that is injected into these lives. Otherwise, things that no kids would choose. Yeah. And so priests, I was around a lot of priests because of my father and his work and his cabal. And I can't say that anyone else harmed me in any way. But they weren't warm. And there was shit going on. I'm talking about the other people, my father's associates. They were sad men, to my mind. And I was always that person. Like I said, I'm the, agent for lost causes. So I'd see an injured chimp, and I would go to him and try to elevate that person. Something natural in my personality that sees, I don't want to see people hurt or something. So I got to know a few of these guys, because that's all they are. They're just guys. And they're completely fucked up, just like everybody else is. And they smell and they say shit. Now, there was a couple of guys that priests that I was like, these dudes I have to keep a distance from. And fortunately, my interactions with them were either in my house. There wasn't any place I was ever alone with these assholes, because I could tell you that things were not cool. It was creepy. And I mentioned that word before. It's fucking creepy. Priests are creepy. Anybody who pretends to speak for a divine force is probably creepy because of how they would give themselves permission to cross other lines, right? It's just a couple of thoughts about my own experiences. I knew a teacher who was, I guess, a Hindu yogi and very charismatic. And I was dating this girl, and she took me to meet him, and that whole thing. And he released my, energy in my head, and I felt it. I have to admit that when he put his hands on my head and whatever, if it was mass hypnosis, if it was whatever it was, I felt it. But I also felt it's just a person, and something's not right. That's it. It's just because somebody is pretending to sort of be the tip of the spear of whatever morally divine thing that, and reality is both things. It's not this and that, like how we're so dual in these ways. But anyway, this guy would have been, this Eastern tradition, and he was having sex with all these girls. And I happened to be there when they happened to confront him. It was spontaneous, like a U2? And this was in the 80s. I found it terribly entertaining. I was like, I was just a fly on the wall on the best moment. I love it. I love it when this stuff gets exposed because of the harm, the physical harm, the intellectual harm. When you indoctrinate children by repeating this bullshit into their heads, really, what proof do you have of any of your religions? Think about it. Beyond your own tradition, anything at all. It's just how you feel. It's just how you want to feel. Geography is the largest predictor of what religion you are. I mean, these things start to stack up, and become liberating. They don't tear your foundations down. They give you the foundation that you've never had. And I'll finish with this thought. When Forrest died, when you lose someone like that, you can't help but put your fist to the sky and say, "What the fuck is this?" I was indoctrinated in Christianity. I still have those feelings and those emotions, or it's like it's part of my DNA. So I'm not closed to supernaturalism or God or spirituality. I'm completely open. Just show me. And when you see death like this, or at least just say for me in this case, I don't know anything else but this, I understood something about it all. And it's just my own personal flash. And I haven't, come up with an easy way to say it. But that connection with all living and death, life and death. When I was on the mountain, climbing this mountain, and I saw this moss it was like 2 inches of just life, and underneath it was moss and more moss and more moss, and all that stuff was what we would call dead. feeding this cycle. And what we have here in our human experience, although I know animals have it too, we are animals ourselves, is a deep need and love for each other and each other's well-being. And I just felt every person who ever buried a son, and even every bug that ever died. So religion, these things, that you've imposed with this just earthly stories, is an affront to that which truly connects us, which is not a supernatural thing. It's a supernatural thing. It's totally natural, and perhaps indifferent, somehow too. That's. I do feel something in me that loves me. Like I said, like that 2 levels, like something, my soul, my spirit that knows me, that's been carrying me and protecting me. But it's inside me. And that's not even something I can say exists. It's something I perceive. So we have to be careful about what we claim to know. I would prefer to not know, to be okay with not knowing. I prefer that. Yeah. Get out of your religion. Be your religion.